Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Welcome home, everybody. It's good to see you, alhamdulillah. Welcome back to our Tuesday night session, 30 Up, where we discuss, or where we're in the middle of discussing a beautiful text called The Content of Character, in which Sheikh Amin al-Mazrui, hafidhullah, he gathered together specific narrations from the Prophet ﷺ and teachings from the life of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he focused on the construction of the internal beauty that a person has, i.e. the character that a person has. And these are all, like we oftentimes think about character and good etiquette as being like ornaments of our faith, right? Like, I'm a believer, and if you're extra lucky, I'll be nice. But I'm a believer, and that's really what matters, right? Is that I believe in Allah. But we actually have so many different proofs and narrations from the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and of course the Quran first and foremost, that good character and faith go hand in hand. And that if a person doesn't have good character, but they've professed their faith, that eventually the absence of their good character will wear down their faith, right? And if a person does have good character, but they don't have strong faith, then what we believe is that eventually their yearning for nobility and virtue and goodness will eventually lead them to faith, right? And so we believe that these two things go hand in hand. A person cannot believe in Allah and be a jerk. A person cannot be a strong believer in Allah and be a jerk or a mean person. It's just not possible. Oil and water, they don't mix. So we believe that this is essential, that if we want to increase our relationship with Allah, that we have to work on increasing our relationship with other people, right? We cannot simply ignore that we live in a place of community, right? That we have family, that we have friends, that we interact with people every day. We can't ignore that. We cannot focus only on the spiritual, right? As Sheikh Mikhail beautifully put it, the vertical, while ignoring the horizontal. So this text focuses on the refinement of the heart through this conversation. We talked so far about a few different narrations. Tonight we're going to do two, inshallah, narrations that, again, continue to refine that. And there are two that are a little bit, they're difficult topics. So inshallah, we'll have a good time tonight. Hopefully you had your matcha, inshallah. Okay. So the first narration is one of the statements of the Prophet ﷺ, in which it was narrated that he said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اثنان لا ينظر الله إليهما يوم القيامة قاطع الرحم وجار السوء. That there are two people, and this is one of those like beautiful Arabic expressions. It's kind of hard to translate, but it's powerful. لا ينظر الله إليهما يوم القيامة. There are two individuals, or you can think of this as two categories of people, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on the day of judgment, we're going to translate it backwards, on the day of judgment, which we know as being a very, very high stakes day. It is the day, right? Like the entirety of your existence, the entirety of what you live for, all of those prayers that you rushed or stressed about making, all of the charity that you ended up giving, all of the fasting in Ramadan, all of these things that we do, they're really all geared towards one moment, which is the day of judgment. If you think about it in that way, it's like the championship of your existence. You focus your entire effort, every sacrifice, every discipline, every moment of good choices, every moment of repentance, all focused on one point, which is the day of judgment. So there's a statement that, they'll make sometimes, if anyone here watches sports, is that they'll say, like, in order to win, you have to work hard, but you also have to get a little bit lucky, right? You have to get a little bit lucky. Like, not everything is going to just be hard work. You just have to get a little bit, you have to have luck on your side, right? So on the day of judgment, we don't believe in luck, but we need all of the advantages that we can get. We need everything has to go right. Even if we don't deserve it, even if we haven't earned it, we need to hope that somehow, some way, everything goes our way. And that's why in Islam, we don't overlook even the small good deeds. Like if I'm like, my wife is like, hey, can you clean up the cat's litter? In my nefs, I'm like, no way. What happened to this like equal responsibilities men and women thing, right? I was like, last time you changed the litter was like a decade ago, right? But then I think to myself, there was a woman in the hadith that she fed an animal and Allah gave her Jannah because she fed the animal. So maybe Allah will give me Jannah because I'm cleaning up the after effects of feeding the animal. Like maybe I'll get that. And wallah al-azim, like as I'm scooping up this animal's excrement. And the animals, you know, cats are intelligent creatures. They have a way of looking at you condescendingly as you're cleaning their litter. So you're like scooping it and they're like, yeah, that's right, right? You know exactly what's going down. Like, you know, they're waiting for you to finish. You know, at least have some decency. Give me space as I denigrate my existence. Like, give me like room to mourn my dignity as I'm scooping your poop, right? But subhanAllah, I'll think to myself, like, oh Allah, like maybe this is the good deed. Like maybe this is it. There's a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Al-khalqu ayalullah. All of creation are dependents on Allah. All of creation. The animals, the trees, right, the earth, every other people, we're all dependent on Allah. And then he says, he continues, and the ones who are most beloved to Allah are the ones who take care of His dependents. Like if somebody was good to your children, and you found out later, like you just showed up and they're like, did you guys have lunch? And they're like, yeah. You know, Ahmed Chacha, he bought us lunch. And you're like, Ahmed, you didn't have to do that. You know, like Ammu Hussein, he bought us lunch. No, you didn't have to do that. But when I found out that you took care of my kids, I may not even know much about you, but I love you so much. Because my dependents, when you took care of them, you got my love now. So the Prophet said, ﷺ, that all of creation are the dependents of Allah. Whoever takes care of the dependents of Allah, Allah loves them. So as you're doing these small deeds for people, realize that this could be your opening. Now, why am I going on this tangent? Because Imam al-Ghazali and others, they actually write something very beautiful. They say that we spend our entire lives hoping, like yearning and praying that maybe these big good deeds that we do, that Allah will grant us paradise as a result of His mercy because we did something really amazing, you know, big and beautiful, like the bill. Astaghfirullah, sorry, I had to. All right? We did something big and beautiful. But Imam al-Ghazali says that it could actually be the deed that you did that was so insignificant to you. Like, think about it. A deed that was so sincere, so insignificant, that you probably even forgot that you ever did it. You know those deeds that you do that actually, you're not celebrating. For you, you're just like, I'm doing this because I know that this is, and no one's watching, and no one will ever know. But I'm going to do this. You're walking in the middle of the night back to your car, and there's a piece of trash on the floor, and you pick it up, and you put the trash in the garbage can, and you think to yourself, no one knows. You don't stop there and take a picture. You tap the time filter on Instagram, 11:53. Look what I did. The world is cleaner because of me. No, you don't celebrate. You just move on. It's normal. And then like a week later, someone will say, hey, did you do something really good on Tuesday night? You're like, what? Like around 11 o'clock? You're like, no. What did I do? You'll be racking your brain, and then all of a sudden they might say, yeah, you picked up later. You're like, well, I forgot I even did that. Imam Ghazali says those deeds that are so sincere that you forgot you even did it, those are the ones that might be the things that take you into paradise. They might be those things. Okay? So the Day of Judgment is a very high stakes day. And that's why as Muslims, we don't overlook, we don't pass up an opportunity to do any good. We think if there's something good that we can do, it doesn't matter if we think of it as being below our pay grade or something that we have far surpassed or something, it doesn't matter. If it's something good and it's an opportunity for us to do, we do it. Because that might be the one thing that tips the scale for us on that day. So this hadith, the crux of it, centers around the Day of Judgment. But it's a little bit scary. Because the expression, the Arabic expression that Allah uses here, which is very powerful, is لا ينظر الله إليهما. Allah will not even notice. You know, the actual literal translation is Allah will not look or glance towards these two people. But The real translation is Allah will not even notice them. Completely will be ignored. Completely ignored by Allah on this day. What does that feel like to you already when you hear that? That there will be two categories of people that Allah will completely ignore them on the greatest day or the greatest moment of their existence. How does that make you feel? What emotions do you start to feel when you hear that description of these two categories? Ashamed, okay? Maybe you're like, ugh. Right? What else do you feel? Scared. Why do you feel scared? Okay, we might be. Well, let's draw it back a little bit. I don't want to be either of them. And I want to make sure that I'm not either of them. So the person reading this narration, and I'm doing this on purpose, I'm not telling you who they are, is feeling very pressed right now. Like, I need to know who these two categories are, because on the most consequential day of my life, there's no way that I can afford being a person that Allah doesn't even look at. How is He going to forgive me if He doesn't look at me? If He doesn't glance at me? If I don't receive the gaze of His mercy? Subhanah. But the two people are actually two individuals or categories that you may not assume. Like, we think of the worst sins that a person could ever commit. What would you think of? Murder. What else? Zina, fornication. What else? Shirk. Okay, yeah, we kind of started at number 3 there, right? Okay, we're climbing. It's like bronze, silver, gold. Okay, so yeah, shirk, right? Murder, zina. What else? Anyone else? Riba. Very good, right? Usury. What else? Backbiting. Strong. What else? Not praying. Yeah, I mean, just skirting your ibadah, like not praying. Forget it. Who needs to pray? I don't care. Like, Allah gave me all of this. It's because of me. What else? Arrogance, all right? The internal sins, okay? All of these are very much like front and center, right? When you talk about sins. You know what's crazy? None of those are mentioned to these two people. In fact, these two people, like, they could have been like, pretty good people. No murder, none of this, none of this. But subhanAllah, you'll see something. In Islam, there's a really, really important principle here. There's obviously a societal value to actions and to certain consequences of actions. Like, for example, we believe, like, absolutely, without a doubt, we believe that, zina or murder or these sins are bad. But then the Prophet ﷺ, he said that backbiting, right, in some scenarios can have worse effects than even fornication. And you're like, how does that make sense? There's no way that makes sense. But then when you think about it, you're like, wait a minute. If a person commits zina, or if two people commit zina, it affects them, right? And perhaps, that sin is contained within their orbit, and that's their issue, and that's something that they have to work on repentance for. But when a person backbites, that actually leads to this like daisy chain of destruction that could actually like ruin someone's career. It could destroy their reputation, which could take away their income, which could hurt their family financially, which could put them in a bad place, which could end up hurting their children's education, which could hurt their marriage. I mean, you're talking about the effects. So it's important for us, as much as we have our predetermined rankings of how bad things are, when you come across a hadith that puts something into your frame that you're like, wow, I didn't expect that to be so bad. Let's think about why it's so bad before we dismiss it as not being so bad. So what are the two categories? He says, qati'u ar-rahimi wa jaru as-su'i. The one who cuts off ties unnecessarily with their family. The one who excommunicates from their family. Excommunicates themselves and their family from, like, I don't want to have nothing to do with you. Now, I know what happens. Here's what happens all the time in Muslim circles. Right? You're like, but what if we're always looking for the exception? Istithna. Oh, but abuse, trauma. Yeah, those exist. And the Prophet ﷺ taught us that there's recourse for certain scenarios. Absolutely. Islam would never ever command a person to sacrifice their mental or spiritual wellness for the sake of maintaining, right, family ties. Like, oh, I'm going to suffer a deep, deep depression where I'm going to consider ending my life just because I have to be good to my brother. That's not how that works. But we're establishing general principles here. The general principle is that your family and you as a member of that family have a responsibility to each other. You have a responsibility to one another. And there's no reason, whenever you think about families that have issues, there is, generally speaking, a very small category of reasons in which a person can casually decide, you know what, I never want to speak to my family ever again. I'll give you an example, because we always go to the exceptions that are valid. Like someone's like, well, what if they did this, this, this? Yeah, there are exceptions that are valid, no doubt. No doubt. But let's go to some scenarios that are not valid. Right? The land disputes. Have you guys seen that TikTok? Where it's like POV, you finally saw the piece of land that your parents stopped talking to each other for. You know, have you seen that? The land disputes. You know, it's funny, like we laugh, we joke, but honestly, it's crazy in this work, in my line of community service, how many families I've come across where people stopped speaking to each other. Why? Because of some condo 6,000 miles away that they were fighting over who gets the key to it. And now, like, cousins can't talk to each other. Right? Cousins that grew up virtually like siblings can't speak to each other. Why? Because there's this really petty dispute over what? Over wealth. Or inheritance. May Allah protect us. Somebody passes away and now there's well, who should get more? Well, who this and this? Well, I have this, I have that. And people start to argue and fight over these things. And as a result of that, because they can't get what they want, they say, you know what? If you don't give me what I want, I'm going to do the ultimate ultimatum. The ultimate leverage. Emotionally, I'm going to threaten to cut you off. And I'll never speak to you again. And you'll be dead to me. Why? Because you didn't give me the percentage of our deceased parents, what they left us. SubhanAllah. This actually is counter to what Islam came to even bring to us. All of these arguments and all these petty disputes were all existent before the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came. This was the culture he was stepping into. He was stepping into a tribal culture in which might was right? Strength was the highest form of communication. And a person was able to just demonstrably get what they want. And the Prophet ﷺ came and he said, no, there's actually a much more beautiful form of strength called what? Called virtue. Called patience. Called forgiveness. Right? Called perseverance. Graciousness. Being a person of grace. These are actually much higher forms of strength than what you think is strength. And the Prophet ﷺ came and he taught us that your family unit, your support, your village, those people that share your kinship, that through thick and thin, more so than anyone else, again, this is a general belief, there are exceptions, more so than anyone else, they will always be there for you when you need it. They will. And there is nothing in the material world, from a general perspective, that is worth losing that relationship when it comes to that village and that kinship. So we have to think about this. This is why the Prophet ﷺ put such a strong emphasis on family relationships. This is why when it comes to parents, when it comes to children, and when it comes to siblings, and when it comes to uncles and aunts, grandparents, etc., this is why you see from the Islamic culture, you see this emphasis on what? On connectedness, on being there. Right? Many of us laugh at the memes and the reels that come up where a person like, hey, your aunt is on the phone, talk to her. And you're like, just tell her I'm dead. It's like, I just tell her I don't want to, but we laugh at that. But really, subhanAllah, we have to remind ourselves that that's an example of keeping that tie of kinship. That's an example. The word rahim in Arabic, rahim, it means womb. Right? Qati'u ar-rahimi, the one who cuts the womb, which means cuts the tie of kinship. And there's no coincidence that the Arabs, when they developed the language, when it came from its primordial development, the word for womb and kinship shares the same root word as the word for mercy. Because by default, your family will always be able to exhibit higher levels of mercy for you than strangers. You will have those friends and those really rare individuals in your life. You can probably count them on one hand. Probably less, honestly, 3 fingers. That their involvement in your life, despite not being related to you, will feel at times like family. Right? Your own sahaba, your own companions that will be there for you. Your kinship and faith is strong. But that's a rare group of people. That's a rare group of people. I remember I used to do a lot of halaqas at the university, UTD, which is like on the national top 100 universities. UTD is right below Harvard. No, I'm joking. At least that's what the Plano parents tell their kids when they ask to leave Dallas. So I used to go to UTD, and it's called Coffee Talk. I used to go there with coffee and like cookies and like, try to teach these kids about Islam and stop them from, dating each other. So I didn't succeed. So, well, at least I taught them about Islam, right? So, and I used to, and the interesting thing is that I would see like the spectrum of kids in front of me. And I'm choosing this example very purposefully because I know a lot of us instantly check out when you hear about college examples, but you were there. And some of us mentally, like, we still kind of inherit a lot of that. So from freshman to sophomore, junior, and senior, and what you see in that spectrum of student is you can see like the physical manifestations of maturity. So the freshman comes in, and if you ask like the freshman student, like, hey, how many friends do you have? They're like, oh, I have like 100. And they're so excited. The freshman's like, I got like 100 friends. I have like 12 different groups. I have this group and that group. I got the movie friends. I got the boba friends. I got the shisha friends. I got the 27th night Ramadan friends. I got the Eid friends, 2 different groups, and then you go a little bit, and as you go down the spectrum of life, what you notice is that circle of friends starts to shrink. And the 18-year-old, as they slowly graduate to 19, 20, 21, 22, they'll start to actually, and this is proven through like studies now, like there's psychological studies, neuroscience, that they'll start to develop this sense of understanding that these people, as close as they are to me, my family was neglected for a long time during my teen years, and now I'm starting to rediscover, right, what family means. Whether it's like the sacrifices my family made or the support that they give me, et cetera, right? And I used to say this at the beginning of every semester, and I tried not to be a Debbie Downer, but I was telling all these students that if you look at all of your friends, you gather every single friend, in a matter of a few years, you'll probably only be close to less than 10% of those people. And I'm not trying to make this like a paranoid group, but the reality is that the further you go on in life, and we can agree to this here, we're all a little bit older, is that good friends are few and far between and hard to come by. So what then is left? What is left for you are those people that you share ties with from birth. The ones that you didn't have a choice, right? You may not even share the same political views. You may not even share the same faith. But you share this kinship. And in some scenarios, that will be very important. Very, very important. So cutting those ties are just simply, generally speaking, not advisable in the Islamic paradigm. And the next group, he says, wajaru as-su'i. And then he says, the other person that Allah Ta'ala will not even gaze at on the Day of Judgment is a bad neighbor, an evil neighbor. Neighborliness is something that the Prophet ﷺ, interestingly enough, taught us is one of those principles of faith that you can't be a Muslim, right? And let's do this thought exercise real quick. Like, how many of us in this room tonight are believers in Allah and His Messenger? Raise your hand if you're a Muslim. Alhamdulillah. Okay. Don't raise your hand, but raise the proverbial hand if either one of your neighbors that you live next to doesn't know who you are. Okay. I'm not, but think about that. Raise your hand if there's someone that you work with every day. Like, you see them every single day and you don't know their name. Or they don't know your name. They have no clue who you are. It could even be someone that you see, we can extend this, right? Someone that you see at the gym. or at the grocery store when you're checking out, and they have no clue who you are. See, in Islam, we believe that there's a higher level of responsibility upon the person who believes in Allah and His Messenger. And we believe that one of those responsibilities that we have to get better at is neighborliness. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Jibreel alayhi salam, the angel, the one who used to bring down wahi. I want you to understand, Jibreel's job, he was called the archangel for a reason. He brings down wahi to prophets. He delivers and he anoints prophets amongst the created beings. And he tells them that you're a messenger of God. Jibreel used to tell the Prophet ﷺ, he used to warn him so much about being a good neighbor that the Prophet ﷺ said, I was convinced in my heart as he's telling me about being a good neighbor that at some point when we were talking about writing your will, as we were going through the categories, he was going to say you have to include your neighbor in your will. He's like, that's how much he used to tell me about it. And that's the culture, right? That's what we come from. And many of us, when we think about, for example, our inherited heritage and practices, what we think what it means to be a good neighbor, we see those things line up exactly with Islam's social etiquette code. Like, what does it mean to be a good neighbor? The State Farm jokes are kicking in, right? What does it mean to be a good neighbor? It means to what? It means to look over your neighbor's belongings, their property, maybe in their absence, right? One time I had somebody, we were traveling and I had someone staying at my house, a friend of ours, just house sitting because, like I said, the cats, right? And my neighbor, Jason, who I've talked about before, he called me. And it's Texas. So Jason has a gun or two. And Jason calls me. It's like really late. I forget, it was like midnight. And he goes, Abdul. And he didn't even say hi. He calls me. I go, hey. He goes, Abdul. I go, yeah. He goes, I'm in front of your house. And I go, I'm not home. And he goes, I know. He goes, I have my guns. I think there's someone in your house. And I was like, and the person in my house, may Allah preserve her, she's like this 4'11", like one of my wife's friends, like this 4'11" girl, lives by her. I cannot say her name because it will be, and he was like ready to end a life. Why? Because he's like, I saw this person walking into your house late at night. And I want to make sure that you're okay. I thought someone was coming in to rob you. And that was, again, his expression of neighborliness. I know that I went from like 0 to 100 there. There's like a lot of steps in between. There's like samosas and like cutting their lawn. Like there's all these things. You don't have to like pull up a gun and stand in front of their door. But I wanted to share with you what a person who is not a Muslim, he's not yet a Muslim, what he demonstrated and honestly falls exactly within our paradigm. But there's so many other things. Abu Darda. He was one time cooking and he was making soup. And as he was making soup, he was boiling, the bones and the meat and the spices and the salt. And the Prophet ﷺ, he came by and he noticed that he was making soup. And so he said, oh, you're cooking dinner? He goes, yeah. And then he told him, he said, have you made enough for your neighbor? And Abu Darda, he said, not particularly. Like, that wasn't my intent. They didn't want to lie. He was like, that's not what I was intending. So he says, فَأَكْثِرْ مَاءَهَا. He says, add some water to it. Because it's just soup anyways. It's not like he said, add some water to it. Which means what? You cannot make dinner for yourself and not have a little bit just to give to your neighbor. Right? So all of this sounds like it's just, cultural, being nice, I'm a good person. No, this is deeply embedded in the divinely revealed scripture of our religion. And you might wonder to yourself, like, okay, why is this so important to Allah? Like, why is being a good neighbor like part of my religious code? And you start to realize that, you know what? What happens, they say in Arabic, تُعْرَفُ الْأَشْيَاء بِأَضْدَادِهَا. You know things by their opposites. What happens if you're not good neighbors? What happens if you exist anonymously, absent from the consciousness of those people who live by you. We don't even need to hypothesize. We don't need to speculate. We are pretty close to that. What happens? What happens is you start to exist as the other. And the people who don't know you will soon have no desire to know you because they won't see you as any part of their life, no function, not even a smile, not even a positive hello, good morning, how are you? And it's tough. I'm from Chicago. If somebody says, if you're walking downtown and someone says, hey, you say, what do you want? You don't respond. Like, there's none of this Southern hospitality stuff. Like, if you're from certain parts, I think it's the cold weather just kills us. It deads our heart. So you come down to the warm areas and they're like, how you doing? And you're like, I'm fine. What do you want? But they're really genuinely trying to ask you, how are you? Right? That's that neighborly attitude, that spirit that Islam propagates and tries to grow within us. And what we see now is like Islamophobia as an institution has thrived. Why? Because of our absence in our neighborliness. What happens when people meet someone who's Muslim and then they hear a story or read a story that is like undeniably anti-Islam? What do? What do they have to do? They have to compare what they've read with what they know. They have to compare what they have heard with the person that they know. And when they do that comparison, you know what happens? Almost every single time they say, you know what? I don't believe that. There's no way that this could be true. There's no way that this could actually be accurate because I know this person. And this person, as long as I've known them, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, they've never demonstrated anything like this. And that's one of the beautiful blessings in the barakah of a person understanding the impact of being a good neighbor. So why then does Allah Ta'ala withhold his glance from these people on the Day of Judgment? Well, if you think about it, what's the relationship between family and your neighbors? You may have not chosen them, okay? Sometimes people do choose neighbors, but you're right. In some ways, you didn't choose them, okay? And your character is ultimately displayed by how you handle situations that you didn't have much impact in or much choice in, right? Okay, good. What else? Okay, so what does that mean about them? If you see them more often, yeah, they're close. Your character is not defined by the people you meet once in your life. Anyone in this room can be amazing for 5 minutes. Like, you can be the nicest person for 5 minutes. And the person walks away and they're like, that person's so nice. But their family and their neighbors are like, you have no idea who that person is. Seriously. Right? Seriously. When I used to go give lectures when I was younger, my mom used to say, before you give the lecture, tell everyone how your room looks right now. And she was trying to teach me that, you know what? It's easy to perform. You can perform in front of everybody. And they'll all believe that you're the best person ever. And think about it. We do this all the time. What do you post on Instagram? Only the good. Do you ever post like you got into an argument with your family and they're like, man, today was tough? Some of you do. That's for your diary, not for social media, right? Let's go ahead and rope that back in. But people don't do that. Unless it's like clickbait, no one does that. No one shares the bad moments. Man, you know what? Today I yelled at my kids. No one does that. Right? So it's easy to impress strangers. You know, we all talk about miracles of prophets. When you think of miracles of prophets, you go down the list, there's a lot of really impressive miracles. Prophet Musa alayhi salam, Prophet Isa, right? Even the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the greatest miracles my teachers told me, he said, you know, you think of miracles, you always think of like the material sciences, right? You know, one of the greatest miracles of any prophet is that when you look at the life of the Prophet alayhi salam, the closer people got to him, the more that they were impressed by him. It's such a hard thing to accomplish. The closer they got to him, the more that they were impressed by him. Because you can impress anybody from far away. But can you imagine? Can you imagine that the person that shared a bed with him, his wife Aisha radiallahu anha, can you imagine that she was the one who had the highest praise of him? Typically when strangers praise you in front of your family, it's your family rolling their eyes. Yes or no? Yeah, right? When strangers are like, you're the one time, I'll never forget, dude. Can I ask everyone a favor? If someone praises somebody that you know to like in front of you, don't challenge it. It's so awkward for everybody. It's awkward for it's also awkward for the one giving the praise. One time I met these two parents of this college student, this young man that I had taught, and I met them for the first time. And I told them, I said, "MashaAllah, you've done a great job raising your son." And they were like, "Oh, Jazakallah khair," and I said, "Yeah, MashaAllah, he's been a pleasure to have in class, and like honestly, his etiquette, like the way he is, the way he carries himself, his interactions have always been so mature. Like, MashaAllah, you've done a great job." And the mom just looks me like dead in the face, and she goes, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Your son is like a really good student. Like, he's great to have in class." She's like, "Oh, I've never seen that before." And she just goes off. And I'm like, I don't need to know this. I feel like I'm getting yelled at, right? Like, why am I involved? Why am I being disciplined, So part of it is that, subhanAllah, when people praise you, it's always the ones that are close to you that are kind of like, right? So it's good etiquette not to reveal people's shortcomings because we all have them. But the real miracle, subhanAllah, that we all strive for, and the way that we hope that Allah Ta'ala will give us His special mercy on the Day of Judgment, is that on the Day of Judgment, you're going to have a million strangers that are going to tell Allah how amazing you are. But imagine how special it will be if the people that are at the front of that line are your family and your friends and your neighbors. The people that are at the front of the line willing to testify for you on the Day of Judgment are the people that knew you the best. How strong is their testimony compared to the person that barely met you ever before? Much stronger. So the Prophet ﷺ tells us in this narration that if you want to be given Allah's special grace on the Day of Judgment, the day that you need it the most, then start to reevaluate. This is not supposed to be crisis, Tuesday night crisis. Start to think about, okay, how can I be a better family member? How can I better my relationship with my family, inshallah, in order to be eligible for that special mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment? We ask Allah ta'ala to give us that. Ameen ya Rab. One more narration, inshallah, for tonight. We've been averaging about 2 a night. And by the way, if you want to ask any questions, you can go to slido.com and the Q&A is open with the code 30 and up. I'm already anticipating the questions about family, so just FYI. All right, next narration, inshallah. It's shorter. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This narration is given to us through Ibn Majah. He says, أحب للناس ما تحب لنفسك. This is one of the oldest good human principles in existence. Every religious group, every optimistic, positive, philosophical, movement has adopted this principle. What is this principle? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, أحب للناس ما تحب لنفسك. Love for all people what you would love for yourself. Love for everyone what you would love for yourself. And this kind of relates to the previous narration, doesn't it? Because really at the core of it is when we look at how we treat people, one of the reasons why we struggle with relationships is because we have a different mechanism of measuring what we deserve versus what we think other people deserve. And when that mechanism is like broken, we walk around and we have very little of this really important relationship skill called empathy. This hadith, love for others what you love for yourself, is basically just a masterclass on empathy. Why would you not want for somebody else what you want for yourself? Is because you have a deficiency in empathy. But if your empathy is strong, if your ability to connect and feel is strong, then naturally what you would think about for someone else is exactly what you had for yourself. If not even, subhanAllah, more than what you had for yourself. And this is one of those skills, again, it's a demonstration of your faith. It's a demonstration of your faith. Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, he actually wrote about this. And he wrote about it in particular with one disease. He wrote about it with the disease, the spiritual disease of envy. Envy is one of the things that stops this from happening. One of the reasons why we have trouble loving for others what we want for ourselves is because we have envy within us. I can't love for this person what I love for myself because I only want it for myself. And I can't imagine someone else, having what I have. It makes me uncomfortable. If I feel irritated by the thought of someone else having what I have, then that's not a good sign for the disease of envy in my heart. It means that I might be subtly infected by that, right? And Imam Ghazali has an interesting point. He says, if you envy somebody, raise your hand if you've ever been jealous of anybody in your life before. Raise your hand. Yeah, right? It's a human emotion. It's a human emotion. Why was shaitan, actually it's a created emotion. Why did he have a problem with Adam again? What was the issue? The Quran says arrogance, but what was the source of his arrogance? He says, why would I bow to him? I'm made of fire, he's made of clay. There was clearly a what? A devaluation, right? There was clearly something happening. Why is Adam getting all of this respect from the angels when I'm made from fire? It wasn't just he was made from fire, by the way, but Shaitan, back before he was cursed, was a very high-ranking creation. He was a worshiper of Allah. So he had some, he kind of felt himself a certain way. And so when he saw all these angels bowing to Adam, part of his process was like, but why him? He's made of dirt. What's so special about that? Do they know who I am? So this envy was the thing that actually was like the tripwire that actually catapulted him into that arrogant statement of what? That I don't want to obey you, Allah. I'm not going to obey you because your command doesn't comply with my envy, doesn't satisfy my nafs. Imam Ghazali says, if you think about it deeply, envy is the worst disease of the heart because it is a fundamental disagreement, not with the person, but with Allah. When I envy somebody, let's say that somebody, mashallah, got a job that pays well, they're living life, they're just living it, mashallah. Everything is great for them. And let's say that for me, my life has kind of been stagnant. Got the same job, struggling, looking, it's not working out. Let's say that one of my friends got married and they're posting about it as married couples do, mashallah, for 52 weeks. By the way, can I give you some advice about preserving your mental health? I'm being 100% serious. Become very judicious and liberal using the mute button. You know what the mute button is? The lack of reaction shows me you don't even know. You need to learn how to mute people. That way you don't unfollow them and they won't chase you down angrily. But you still follow them. But if they show you something constantly that irritates you, I tell this to people all the time. People say, oh, I'm so upset. My friends got married. I'm single. I'm struggling. I don't like seeing it. Mute them. It's not personal. I just don't want to see your wedding cake in 17 different angles. It's not that, I don't want to see you like doing those awkward wedding poses in front of, in the park. Like, that's not what I want. And now, once you get to a certain point, you're like, I just, mashallah alaikum, like jami'an, like Allah bless all of you. Times I feel like the Pope. I'm like, just like, I'm happy for everybody. But if that's something that's burning you up inside, mute. Just mute. It's not personal. But you have the right to protect what you're consuming. You have every right to protect what you're consuming, to protect you. Don't test yourself with the ability to be patient. Sometimes you can't handle it yet. It's okay. A wise person knows their limits. And if you've seen something over and over and over and over again, khalas. Protect yourself. Okay? So if you see that, one of the things that Al-Ghazali says, which is so powerful, is he says, look, don't get upset at your friend, though. Don't get upset at your friend. Them getting the job, it's not their fault. Them getting married is not their fault. If you disagree with anyone in this scenario, it's Allah, because He's the one that is the giver of all provisions. And if you disagree with Allah, that says something very, very unfortunate about your state of trust in Him. Because close friends, people who trust each other, they don't disagree like that. They don't argue like that. If my friend who I love, who I'm super close with, decided that he wanted to give a gift to somebody and didn't give me a gift, my friendship, my closeness with that person should dictate that what? It's not a big deal. I'll get mine. Right? When it's time for me, I'll get mine. Don't be like a child. The worst thing about having 2 kids, alhamdulillah, is that when it's one of their birthdays, you have to get a gift for who? The other one. The other one. All the parents are nodding their heads in defeat. You have to buy double the birthday gifts every birthday, right? I'm almost about to say birthdays are haram. I'm about to go back to that ruling. Because honestly, maybe they were onto something, right? Because Baba's being depleted right now. What about me? And it's like, you try to explain it, and there's like, okay, khalas, here, just have this. Here, I'll get you something too. Just because you're her brother. Just because you're his sister, right? But that's a childish reaction. A childish reaction is, he got one, why don't I get one? We expect that from children, but when adults act like that, there's a problem. That's an issue, right? That's an issue. So he says here, love for others what you love for yourself. Love for everyone what you love for yourself. At the core of your very existence, you will only truly discover happiness when you can actually be happy for other people, just as you would be happy for yourself. That's when you're going to be the happiest. Contentment, this is the secret. If a person always has their eyes on other things and other people's things, they'll never be happy. Lowering the gaze is not just between genders. The great scholars of tasawwuf and of the heart, they said, you need to learn how to lower your gaze from even other people's belongings, other people's lives, other people's whatever. Just lower your gaze. Don't walk in the house and be like, how'd you afford this? Don't look at the car and be like, lower your gaze. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. It's all good. It's all good. Has nothing to do with you. Has nothing to do with me. Everything to do with Allah. And I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with that. Because just as Allah gives, He's going to give again here and here and here. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, one time was asked by somebody about rizq. And Imam Malik gave a beautiful answer. He said, rizq is like rain. Some days it rains here, and some days it rains there. Right? You don't get angry because it rained over there. What do? You wait for the rain to come to you. We ask Allah Ta'ala to make our hearts happy with Him and content with Him. We ask Allah Ta'ala to take our eyes away from the things that other people have and place our eyes contentedly on what we have. We ask Allah Ta'ala to make us those that are as good as we can to our families and that we are as good as we can be to our neighbors. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. We'll go ahead and do some Q&A, inshallah. So slido.com. And the code is 30 and up. First one, Sheikh, I apologize for ever thinking your stories were a tad bit fake. All right, strong start tonight, everybody, mashallah. You know what's so funny is that when people meet my kids, they're like, man, I thought you were legitimately like exaggerating. They're like, but your kids are like, that's who they are. They're half Egyptian. Sorry, they're a quarter Egyptian, quarter Irish, and half Bengali. They have everything. They have everything, right? So, yeah, I don't make up stories. I wish. There's actually, bil'aks, like I hold back so many stories out of shame. Okay. How should you, I knew this one was coming, and it's good. How should you fix your relationship with your parents when they despise your presence since you are unmarried, since you're an unmarried woman in her late 20s? Look, this is the important point of this hadith. Allah Ta'ala gives general principles, right? Be good to your parents. Be dutiful to your parents, actually. Dutiful is actually the right word of understanding, right? وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Allah Ta'ala says, do your best. Do your best. Fulfill what you can to the best of your ability. But then other places in the Quran, right? The story of Sayyidina Luqman. What does he say? He advises his son that you only are dutiful to your parents up and until there is a deviation from what Islam would allow as being normative treatment. Islam never demands that a person take abuse, ever. Name one scenario where the Prophet ﷺ told somebody, just take abuse, just take it. It'll be good for you. He never did. In fact, we literally have stories, subhanAllah, there's one in particular that blows my mind. The story of Umar radiallahu anhu, who, there was a dad who came to Umar and he complained to Umar. He's like, my son is so bad. He's so bad. And he just complained about him. He said, he does this, he does that. He's just so bad. He's like the worst son ever. And Umar, he's smart, right? Radiallahu anhu, he's intelligent. He knows what? You never take one side. You always got to listen to both sides. So he calls the son, right? He calls the son. And he asks the son, he goes, your dad says you're a pretty worthless human being. And he goes, what do you have to say for yourself? And the son says, you know what my dad did to me? And Sayyidina Umar goes, what? And he goes, he basically neglected me. He never taught me. He never cared for me. I never saw him. He abandoned me. My mother, the woman that he married, he loved her, but she was horrible to me. He never ever defended. Like, he just went off. And everything he said, legitimate grievance. The dad was not doing his job. What's the purpose of a father? To protect and to grow and to what? And to invest in his family. That's the purpose of a husband or a father. You're supposed to be the strength. You're the fortress. If someone in your house is being abused, even if it's by somebody else, right? As Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Hujurat, if one group attacks another, you have to defend. You have to stop the fighting. That's the job of the father. So this son is like, my dad never did that. My dad was he never did anything for me. And and the dad was like, true. And Umar looked at the father and he said, this is a problem that you created for yourself. He said, everything you complained about with your son, you did that. You did that. Now, I'm not saying to this sister I'm not saying like you're a problem. But what I am saying is, look at how Sayyidina Umar put the responsibility back on the dad. Right? It's not a one-way street. A lot of times Islam is presented as what? Oh, kids, you have to do this and that's it. No. Yes, there is the one side of it. But Islam always balances out responsibilities on one side with the other side. Always. The only relationship in existence where there's responsibility on one side is our relationship with Allah. The responsibility is all ours. But the beautiful part about that relationship is even though Allah is not demanded to give anything, He gives more than everybody else. Every other relationship, there's two sides to it. There's a give and there's a take. Okay? Marriage, parent-child, business partners. There's contracts. There's whether they're formal or social. There's contracts there. So how do you fix your relationship with your parents? This is the answer that I can give without knowing specifics is look, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Just do your best. Just do your best. And your best might be different from day to day. There might be some days where things are particularly hot and particularly sensitive and the nerve is particularly raw. That day maybe you don't, hey, do you guys want to bake a cake together? Maybe you don't do that. But maybe there's a time when things are a little bit more normal, a little bit more balanced, a little bit more functional, and you're able to have a cup of tea, right? A relationship, maybe. And realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you for your effort. Allah is not going to reward you for your accomplishment because that's not in your hands. There's two sides to this equation. You do your part. You do your part. That's it. Everything else is going to be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you say salam to someone and they don't respond to you, guess what? Allah is going to reward you for that. He's going to reward you for that. If you smile at someone and they, look at you rudely, Allah is going to reward you for that. Allah is never ever going to make all of your efforts go to waste. Okay? So do your best, inshallah. Obviously, another element is going to be to make sure that you have good friends, good companions. Make sure that you connect with maybe others in your family. Maybe your parents had this issue with you and they're struggling because of their own weaknesses and their own biases. But maybe you have an uncle or an aunt that is like very understanding. Maybe your grandparents. I've seen situations where the parents are really, really, disqualified in a lot of ways from parenting, but the grandparents are like amazing. The parents are like really, really frustrating, and the grandparents are more understanding, even though they're older, right? And they're kind of from a more senior generation, but they just have more mercy, subhanAllah. Something there. So sometimes it's not even about the age or the relationship, but in your family, find the mercy where you can get it. And just look for it there. And make that your base, inshallah. The next question, wallahu alam. What if family are not the best to you? What if they cut ties, don't serve parents, but others fill that role? What does it say? Well, look, the reality is this is talking about an ideal scenario. This is talking about an ideal scenario where a person does what they can. Okay? And again, there's a reason why in the Quran, let's name all the prophets that had family drama. You ready? The list is pretty long. Right? How many of you have had drama with your siblings before? Raise your hand. Okay? Did they try to kill you? Don't raise your hand. I I can't. I'm a mandated reporter by the state. I cannot see anyone. Okay? Did they leave you in a well for dead? Hopefully not. I said this last night in Heartwork. Ibrahim alayhi salam. A lot of us are like, oh, Ibrahim, yeah, his life was, it was tough for a little bit, but then he's Khalilullah. Ibrahim's father said, get out or I'm going to kill you right now. And he wasn't saying it rhetorically. He was like, I will murder you if you don't leave this house. And Ibrahim had to leave by himself. Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. Prophet Musa. I mean, like, think about it. His mom had to give him up at a young age, literally send him down the river as a baby, and was only saved by some miracle that Fir'aun's wife had mercy for him in her heart. That was it. And then subhanAllah, as he gets older, goes through all this difficulty, separated from his parents, separated from his mother. Like subhanAllah, so every prophet that you read about in the Quran had some family issues. Maybe it wasn't like family cutting off ties, this and that, but there's so many different scenarios. Sayyidina Lut, alayhi salam, like his wife literally went against him in every form. Prophet Nuh, his son, turned his back on him. You know, I shared this with I think a couple times. My eldest sister is not Muslim. She left Islam, my eldest sister. And like, that was the one thing that helped my mom was the story of Nuh. That she had to know that it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Right? This happens. Everyone has to make their own choices. So the Quran is filled with these stories. Why? Not because it's like compelling drama, but because in every story you're going to find yourself. In some phase of your life, you're going through something, you're going to find yourself. And also to show you that just because your family has drama doesn't mean that you're a bad person. Doesn't mean that Allah doesn't love you. Doesn't mean, no. It just means what? That's the storm that you're in right now. And you got to weather that storm. You got to figure it out. Right? You got to process and think through it and have faith through it, just like those prophets did. What did the prophets do in those dramas? They had faith. And that's what got them to their positions. We got to follow that path, inshallah. May Allah Ta'ala make it easy. Yeah, there's a bunch of questions on that. We'll do one more. How can you change the thought process of Allah can handle my problems, but what if He doesn't want to, as an ordinary person versus people of the Quran? I had a conversation today with somebody about this, actually. I'll share with you what we talked about. Look, there is a so the foundation of this answer lies on a very important principle. And that principle is that our intellectual capacity is limited and that Allah's intellectual ability is unlimited. He is the all-knowing and we are the part-knowing. Okay? If we can all agree on that premise, then we can move forward. Do we agree that we don't know everything? Yes or no? We agree, correct? We don't know everything. Do you want proof for that? Has anyone learned something new recently? When you learn something new, you establish proof to yourself that you don't know everything. Now, we believe that Allah is different than us. He knows everything. So for Allah, that limited knowledge is not a thing. He knows every single thing. Now, when you make a decision based off of partial knowledge, you're making it to the best of your ability, but at the end of the day, you don't know everything. So many of us, when we do this, we experience this thing in life called what? Regret. Right? Mistakes, regret. Why? Because we made a decision. We made a decision based off the best knowledge that we had available at the time. We move forward, and then within a time frame, short, medium, or long, we realize, you know what? I probably should not have done that. I would have been better off if I didn't make this decision. And we regret it, right? Okay. That moments of regret, teach us something very important about our relationship with Allah. That when we are begging Allah or seeking something from Allah or hoping for something in our lives, we need to realize that there is a chance that that thing could be good for us, sure, like we hope for, or that thing could be bad for us. And in the event that that thing does not happen for us, we have to believe. This is the hard part. We have to believe that that thing that did not happen for us was what was better for us. By not getting it, we are better off. That's the conviction that a believer has. That's what we have to have. And the reason why we have that is because of everything else that we know about Allah. Allah is not petty. Allah does not like, to oppress. He does not oppress anybody. Allah does not like to hurt. Allah does not, no. Right? That's not what defines Allah and His characteristics. He's Ar-Rahman. He's Ar-Rahim. He's Al-Wadud. These are His names, the most merciful, the most beneficent, the loving. So a loving being has to withhold sometimes. My 8-year-old son is like, Baba, hand me that lighter. Baba, give me that Japanese Santoku knife. No, right? You have 2 left feet. You can barely walk in a straight line. I'm not giving you a dangerous object. Okay? Why? And they're going to say, Baba, you're the worst, man. You don't give me that knife. Every time I ask, you never give me the knife. I'm doing this because I love you. I'm withholding this because I love you. But Baba, I'm asking you. I'm crying for it. And I don't care if you're crying for it. Your tears cause me pain, but the thought of you hurting yourself causes me more pain. I would rather take your tears now than your tears in the emergency room later. Quite frankly. So now, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلِ الْأَعْلَى. Like switch that example with Allah. How many times do we sit there asking, hoping, yearning, begging from Allah? And then at the end of that, when things are not panning out, we're like, does God hate me? Is He upset with me? Instead of thinking that, think to yourself, what is Allah protecting me from today? I had a conversation earlier. My friend is selling his house. If anyone's interested, let me know. And he's about to lose a lot of money on it. Right? May Allah Ta'ala, inshallah, increase him. He's losing money on it. He's worried. And I asked him a question. I said, thought exercise. You ready? He said, let's do it. I said, tomorrow, you go to the doctor and the doctor says that your son has leukemia. He's losing $50,000 on the house, by the way. May Allah Ta'ala help him. I said, would you pay that doctor that $50,000 to get rid of that diagnosis completely? Like just erase it? And with tears in his eyes, he's like, of course. I said, so what's stopping you from imagining that that's what's happening? What's stopping you? What did the hadith say? What's the hadith? The believer is not put in any difficulty, even the prick of a what? A thorn, right? You've heard this before, yes or no? Except that Allah Ta'ala removes some difficulty from their life. Whether that is their accrue of sin or... So I said, whatever you're going, 50,000 is a lot of thorns. I said, now imagine all the things that Allah is protecting you from. Do that exercise. Kierkegaard is a great philosopher. He actually wrote this. And he said, destiny is best understood looking backwards, not forwards. The problem with us is that we get caught trying to understand destiny looking ahead. There's too many unknowns. There's too much that we can't see. The only way you can understand destiny is by looking back. Look at your life and look at all the times that Allah has preserved you and saved you and has, because of what? Because maybe, subhanAllah, you couldn't see it at the time, but He saved you. Just familiarize yourself with that. Make that your small journal. Make that your book of reminders of the times that Allah saved you. You were so convinced that this was the right person. You were so convinced that this was the right job. You were so convinced. And Allah Ta'ala didn't give that thing to you. And then 5 weeks, months, years later, you said, oh Allah, thank you so much for protecting me from who? Myself. You saved me from my own self. I would have been destroyed had you let me make my own decisions. Right? That's why we say, oh Allah, do not let us in charge of our own affairs, even for what? بِطَرْفَةِ عَيْن, like even the blink of an eye. Don't let me make my own choices, even the blink of an eye, because you know what? I might choose the wrong thing. I had that experience last week when I had raw oysters for the first time. I said, oh Allah, never let me order my own food again. Right? Ya Allah. We ask Allah Ta'ala to preserve us and to protect us. Ameen. We ask Allah Ta'ala to soften our hearts and to bring us closer to Him in public and in private. We ask Allah Ta'ala to always grant our hearts closeness and commitment to Him. We ask Allah Ta'ala to make this faith something that enriches us and rejuvenates us and rehydrates our hearts. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Subhanak Allahumma bihamdik nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Inshallah, we have a few minutes till Isha, so Maghrib, I'm sorry. And so we are going to ask everyone to put the chairs back as much as they can, inshallah. And then we also have